I wake up before my alarm clock rings. In the dimly lit room, Luke is still breathing steadily beside me. I quietly get up and slip on my slippers. Taking care not to make the floorboards creak, I make my way to the kitchen. Once in the kitchen, I open the blinds first. The morning sun streams in, softly illuminating the fruit bowl on the counter. I switch on the coffee maker, and its rich aroma begins to fill the room. This scent signals the start of my day. Standing by the window, I gaze at the garden. In the well-tended flower beds, seasonal blooms are flourishing. Red, pink, and yellow flowers glisten with morning dew. And there, standing tall in the center, is the old tree. Every time I look at it, something stirs in my heart. Why does this tree make me feel so melancholic? Was that decision back then the right one? Taking a deep breath, I begin preparing breakfast. I put bread in the toaster and set a pot on the stove to boil eggs. I take jam and butter from the refrigerator and arrange them on the table. I hear Luke coming down the stairs. I say, "Good morning," but Luke's response is barely a nod. I watch his profile as he sits at the table with the morning paper. We used to talk so much more. Breakfast time used to be our precious moment together. "Will you be late today?" I ask, and Luke replies curtly without looking up from his newspaper, "Yes, I have a meeting." "Any special meeting?" I probe further, but he just responds briefly, "Just the regular one." I feel a bit sad, realizing how accustomed I've become to our lack of conversation. After breakfast, Luke prepares for work. I call out, "Be careful," at the doorway, but he gets into his car without looking back. As I listen to the engine sound fade away, I think to myself, so this has become our daily routine. Back inside, I start the housework. I put laundry in the washing machine and vacuum the living room. While cleaning the windows, my eyes drift back to the tree in the garden. What memories does that tree hold? That day, too. I focus on cleaning to shake off these thoughts. I organize the kitchen shelves and dispose of old dishes. Taking a brief break, I sip some coffee. In the quiet house, only the ticking of the clock can be heard. In the afternoon, I head to the local volunteer center. Today's activity is origami with children. Their eyes sparkle at the sight of colorful paper. "Aunt Angela, how do you fold this?" a little boy asks, and I gently show him how. Watching his small hands skillfully fold the paper makes my heart tighten. "Aunt Angela, isn't it good?" a little girl shows me with a smile. "Very good." "What a beautiful crane," I reply, thinking how nice it would be to have a child showing me such smiles. If I had made a different choice back then. After the activities end, I return home. Silence greets me when I open the door. No one answers even if I say, "I'm home." I go out to the garden and begin tending to it. Watering the flowers and pulling weeds, I start to feel a bit better as I work up a sweat. I stop in front of the old tree. Placing my hand on its trunk, I close my eyes. Perhaps this tree is a witness to my life. It has seen everything, my joys and sorrows. In the evening, I get a call from my friend Monica. "Angela, how are you?" "Yes, I'm fine." "How about you, Monica?" "I'm good too." Hey, about what we discussed the other day. Conversations with Monica are one of my daily small pleasures. Talking with her lightens my heart a bit. We chat about everyday things and share thoughts about movies we've seen recently. By the way, Angela, how are things with Luke? At Monica's question, I momentarily stumble for words. Oh, same as usual, I answer vaguely, but Monica's sharp intuition seems to sense my feelings. If anything's wrong, you can always talk to me, Monica says, and I feel a bit relieved. After hanging up, just as I'm about to start preparing dinner, I receive a message from Luke. Working late today. Don't wait up for dinner. Alone again. But what scares me is how used to it I've become. I eat dinner alone in the quiet house. I turn on the TV, but it feels like it's just making noise. While eating, I remember my younger days. The happy times when Luke and I first met. Where did that happiness go? I wash the dishes and take a bath. Soaking in the tub, I reflect on the day. The same routine, day after day. But something's missing. What is this emptiness? Getting out of the tub, I stand in front of the mirror. A slightly tired face looks back at me. There are faint wrinkles under my eyes. I've aged. But life still has so much ahead. Changing into my pajamas, I lie in bed. I pick up a book, but my eyes grow heavy after just a few pages. I close the book and place it on the bedside table. Staring at the ceiling, I think about tomorrow. Will anything change? Every day is the same routine. But surely something must change. Before closing my eyes, I take one more deep breath. In the quiet night, I feel a premonition that something might happen. Maybe tomorrow will be different from usual. With these thoughts, I slowly drift off to sleep. I was awakened by the sudden sound of the doorbell in the middle of the night. Looking at the clock with sleepy eyes, I see it's past 2 a.m. Could it be Luke? But at this hour. Still in my nightgown, I go downstairs to the door. The cold floor beneath my feet somewhat dispels my drowsiness. When I open the door, Luke is standing there. But he's not alone. Luke. My voice trembles. Next to Luke stands a boy about 10 years old. The boy looks tired and glances around anxiously. His figure is dimly visible in the dark entranceway. Angela, we need to talk. Luke's voice is low, tense. I invite them both inside. When I turn on the living room lights, I can see the boy clearly. Brown hair, large eyes, something familiar about his features. This child looks like someone. His name is Stanley, Luke says. And Luke's next words stop my world. You raise him. What? I can't find words. My mind goes blank. I can't do it anymore. The work, this family, everything's become too much, Luke continues with a tired expression. Stanley is my child. But I don't have the confidence to raise him. I stand there in shock, feeling unsteady on my feet. Stanley looks frightened, glancing back and forth between Luke and me. His eyes are full of anxiety and confusion. Wait, Luke. What do you mean? Explain. I try to maintain composure, but my voice cracks. But Luke is already heading for the door. We'll talk later. Right now. I need time. Luke. I try to stop him, but he leaves without looking back. The sound of the door closing breaks the silence. It's just Stanley and me now. Only the ticking of the living room clock sounds abnormally loud. Is this a dream? Yes, surely it must be a dream. But the presence of the boy before me forces me to face reality. Stanley's figure stands like a boundary between reality and unreality. Stanley's small voice brings me back to myself. I'm sorry. Stanley, right? I try to smile gently, but my facial muscles don't seem to work properly. Are you hungry? Would you like something to eat? Stanley nods slightly. His eyes hold a mixture of anxiety and expectation. I head to the kitchen and open the refrigerator. The cold air hits my face. What should I feed him? What do 10-year-old children like? I decide to make a sandwich. While putting ham, cheese, and lettuce between slices of bread, my mind is in turmoil. Luke's child. When? With whom? And why now? I place the sandwich in front of Stanley. Thank you, he says in a small voice and begins to eat. Each of his movements seems to be in slow motion. I stare at Stanley's face. This face, somewhere. The memory I can't quite recall swirls hazily in my mind. Stanley, aren't you sleepy? I ask him after he finishes his sandwich. Looking at the clock, it's already past 3. He nods. His tired expression is even more pronounced. Then let me prepare a place for you to sleep. I hurriedly make up the guest room bed. Laying sheets, taking out blankets. As I go through these mechanical motions, various thoughts run through my mind. Leaving a child in the middle of the night like this. Luke, what are you thinking? Here, you can sleep here, I guide Stanley to the bed. If you need anything, just call me. Stanley gets into bed silently. His anxious expression makes my heart ache. I gently pull the blanket up to his shoulders. I leave the room and return to my bedroom. Sitting on the bed, I hold my head in my hands. In the silence, my heartbeat sounds abnormally loud. What should I do now? Unable to sleep, I watch the sky slowly brighten outside the window. Various thoughts swirl in my mind. Anger at Luke, confusion about Stanley, and anxiety about how my life will proceed from here. When the morning sun begins to stream in, I finally get up. My face in the mirror is distorted with fatigue and confusion. I try to calm myself with deep breaths, but the fog in my chest won't clear. I peek into Stanley's room quietly. He's sleeping peacefully. His sleeping face is young and innocent. This child is not at fault. But am I prepared to raise him? I head to the kitchen and begin preparing breakfast. An atmosphere completely different from usual mornings pervades the house. While making coffee, I think back to last night's events. I wish it had all been a dream, but my heart struggles between this wish and the recognition that I must accept the reality before me. The morning sun streams in through the window, and I wake up. For a moment, I wish last night's events were just a nightmare, but seeing the empty bed beside me brings reality crashing back. I take a deep breath and slowly sit up. Leaving the bedroom, I hear faint sounds from the kitchen. Stanley is already sitting there, looking at me anxiously with his large eyes. "Good morning, Stanley," I say gently. "Gee, good morning." His voice is small and trembling. While preparing breakfast, I try to make conversation. "Is there anything you'd like to eat?" Stanley shakes his head. "Anything is fine." I make toast and scrambled eggs and place them on the table. Stanley begins to eat hesitantly. I can see his small hands trembling slightly. "Which school do you go to?" I ask carefully. Stanley looks surprised for a moment. I don't go to school." This response tightens my chest. What does this mean? A 10-year-old not in school. After breakfast, I ask Stanley to return to the guest room and call Monica. My fingers tremble slightly as I dial. "Monica, something terrible has happened," I explain the events of last night. I try to convey the situation as calmly as possible while choosing my words carefully. "Oh, Angela." Monica's voice mixes surprise and concern. "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do to help?" "Thank you, Monica. But I don't even know what to do yet." My voice trembles slightly. "First, calm down," Monica says soothingly. "Why don't you try contacting Luke's company to find out where he is? And we need to look into Stanley's situation too." Monica's calm advice helps settle my heart a bit. "Yes, you're right. Thank you." After hanging up, I take a deep breath to compose myself. Next, I call Luke's company. "Hello, Luke's company," a cheerful receptionist answers. "This is Luke Smith's wife. Is my husband in today?" My voice tries to maintain composure but rises slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Smith has taken leave today." This response increases my anxiety. "Luke, where are you?" Next, I call nearby schools. I inquire about any transfer students or absent children named Stanley, but get no information. Each inquiry only raises more questions. This won't do. I need to talk directly with Stanley. I knock on Stanley's door. "Stanley, would you like to go to the park?" Stanley hesitates but nods. Something in his gesture suggests he has something he wants to say. At the park, we sit on a bench. Stanley remains silent, kicking at stones by his feet. A gentle spring breeze blows between us. "Stanley, I want to know more about you," I speak gently. "Where have you been living?" Stanley pauses before answering. "Various places." His words carry an indescribable loneliness. "What about your mother?" At this question, Stanley's expression clouds over. "I don't know." His voice is barely audible. "Has this child been living without parents?" My heart aches. "And Luke, your father? He would come visit sometimes." But Stanley's words trail off. Something unspoken dwells in his eyes. I carefully place my hand on his shoulder. Stanley tenses slightly but doesn't try to escape. "Stanley, I'll protect you. I promise." At these words, Tears well up in Stanley's eyes. His small body trembles slightly. As time passes in the park, Stanley gradually relaxes. We swing together on the swings and eat ice cream. I manage to see his smile. That smile was like a ray of light breaking through clouds. On the way home, Stanley says in a small voice, "Miss Angela, thank you." These words spread warmth through my heart. I must protect this child. But how? Back home, there's a message on the answering machine. It's from Luke. "Angela, I won't be back for a while. Take care of Stanley." A short, curt message. Anger and anxiety well up. "Luke, what are you thinking?" Looking at Stanley, he too has an anxious expression. His small body seems to shrink as if afraid of something. "It's okay, Stanley. We'll get through this together," I say while gently hugging his shoulders. In the evening, I call Monica again. "Monica, what do you think I should do?" My voice mixes anxiety and determination. While waiting for Monica's response, I look out the window. The sunset-lit sky seems to symbolize our uncertain future. Yet, I feel I can see a glimmer of hope within it. Stanley and I will overcome this situation together. I vow this in my heart. After Stanley falls asleep, I sit alone in my bedroom. Moonlight filtering through the window casts pale shadows in the room. I hold an old album in my hands. Opening the cover, I see a photo of myself from 20 years ago. Me at 18. That smile then had an innocence now lost. Turning the page, I see myself with a large belly. When I was pregnant with twins. The excitement and anxiety of that time come back as if it were yesterday. 20 years since that day. Closing my eyes, the memories of that day come back vividly. Me in the hospital bed, pushing back my sweat-soaked hair, holding two babies. Connor and Mark. Both so small and fragile, yet crying strongly. But that joy was short-lived. Reality hit us. We were too young, faced financial difficulties, received cold stares from others. Everything weighed heavily on us. And then, that decision. It still hurts my heart. The choice to give Connor up for adoption. At the time, I thought it was the best path. I believed I could give Connor a better life, a more stable home. I stare at Connor's photo in the album. My expression holding him as a newborn shows a mixture of joy and sorrow. "I'm sorry, Connor. I had to let you go. I'm so sorry. And Mark. I chose to raise him. But I never imagined that decision would cast a shadow over our relationship." I flipped through photos tracking Mark's growth. Kindergarten entrance ceremony, elementary school sports day, middle school graduation. There are smiles in every photo, but somehow they feel distant. Especially in photos after puberty, something dwells in Mark's eyes. Is it accusation or sadness? "Mark, you always felt it, didn't you?" Connor's presence. The secret I kept. I think about my current relationship with Mark. Living alone in the city, immersed in work. Our conversations grow fewer each year. I pick up my phone and dial Mark's number. My heart races as it rings. Hello, Mark's voice is cold and businesslike. Mark, it's Mom. What do you need? A curt response. I just wondered how you were doing. I choose my words carefully. I'm busy with work. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up. Wait, Mark. Actually, I stumble over my words. I feel the urge to tell him everything, about Stanley, about Luke, about everything. But I reconsider, thinking this isn't something I should discuss over the phone. What? There's irritation in Mark's voice. I'd like to talk with you properly sometime. Could we meet? A moment of silence. I'm busy right now. I'll call you later. Then the line goes dead. I hold the receiver, tears falling. Mark, I need to apologize to you too. About Connor, and about the burden I made you carry. I look out the window, imagining Mark living in the bustling city. His life, his thoughts, everything feels so distant to me. And then I think of Stanley, sleeping in the next room. This child's presence might change everything. My relationship with Mark, a reunion with Connor. I close the album and sigh deeply. I feel both the difficulty and necessity of facing the past. Stanley's presence is forcing me to confront the weight of my decision from 20 years ago. But I won't run away this time. For Stanley's sake, for Mark's sake, and for my own. With this resolve in my heart, I lie down on the bed. What will the coming days bring? With mixed anxiety and expectation, I quietly close my eyes. I'm awakened by a phone call from Monica. Looking at the clock, it's 7 a.m. Angela, are you awake? I have important information. Monica's voice carries urgency. Yes, I'm listening. My sleepiness vanishes instantly. I looked into Emma. She's Connor's adoptive mother. These words drain the blood from my face. What did you say? Yes, and Stanley. Monica hesitates for a moment. Stanley is Connor's son. In other words, he's your grandson. I feel the room spinning. I lean against the wall, taking deep breaths. Angela, are you all right? Monica's voice sounds distant. Yes, just shocked. Words fail me. There's something even more shocking, Monica continues. Luke and Emma, they had a plan. A plan. Yes. They were trying to control your life under the guise of family reunification. Anger wells up. What do you mean? Monica begins explaining the details. Luke and Emma had been having an affair for years, and they were trying to manipulate me using Connor's existence. Their goal was to secure their own position by stirring up my emotions and exploiting family bonds. But why? I ask. There seems to be a financial motive too. They were after your family trust fund. At these words, my anger peaks. I can't believe it. Monica continues, even bringing Stanley to you was part of their plan, to stimulate your maternal instincts and make you more susceptible to their scheme. Tears roll down my cheeks. A mix of anger, sadness, and the pain of betrayal. Angela, listen, Monica's voice softens. You're the victim here. But now we need to think about Stanley. I picture Stanley's sleeping face. Yes, Stanley is an innocent child, and he's my grandson. Monica, thank you. What do you think I should do now? First, stay calm. And you should get legal advice. After hanging up, I stand by the window, gazing at the scenery outside. It feels like my world has completely changed. I peek into Stanley's room. He's still sleeping. I must protect this child. But I also need to reunite him with Connor. Back in the living room, I look at family photos. My wedding photo with Luke, records of Mark's growth, and the baby photo of Connor that I had kept hidden. It was all lies. Our life, my relationship with Luke. Waves of anger and sadness wash over me. I feel the urge to cry and scream at the same time. I take deep breaths to calm myself. Stay rational, Angela. This is no time to be swept away by emotions. I make coffee and sit at the kitchen table. In my head, I begin organizing an action plan. Secure legal custody of Stanley. Contact Connor and explain the situation. Tell Mark the truth. Consider legal measures against Luke and Emma's scheme. The morning sun begins to brighten the room. The start of a new day. And the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Stanley, are you awake? I knock on his door. The door opens, and Stanley's sleepy face appears. Good morning, I gently stroke his hair. Today might be a special day. Stanley looks puzzled. Hey, Stanley. Would you like to meet your father? His eyes widen. My father. You know my father. I smile and answer, yes, I do. Your father is my son. Stanley's expression fills with surprise and confusion. Let me explain everything. While we prepare breakfast. As I head to the kitchen, I make a vow in my heart. I won't lose my precious ones again. I will protect this family. While making breakfast, I quietly shed tears. Not tears of sadness. Tears of hope for a new beginning. At a window seat in the cafe, I nervously tap my fingers on the table. 5 minutes until our appointed time. I'm waiting to meet my son, Connor, after 20 years. The door opens, and I quickly look up. There stands a young man with eyes the same color as mine. Connor. He looks at me hesitantly. Mom. His voice trembles slightly. I stand up and approach him. Connor. Words catch in my throat. After a moment of silence, we embrace. 20 years of feelings condense into this single moment. Let's sit down, I say. We're both trying to control our emotions. As we take our seats, Connor speaks. Actually, I've known all along. What? That I was adopted. And that you were my birth mother. I'm speechless with surprise. Connor continues, my adoptive parents told me when I turned 18. But I didn't know when would be the right time to contact you. I see. My chest aches. I'm sorry, Connor. For giving you up. It's okay, Connor smiles gently. My adoptive parents loved me very much. But I always thought about you. Tears run down my cheeks. Connor. In the living room where the whole family has gathered, a heavy silence falls. Connor takes a deep breath and begins to speak. Everyone, we need to talk about Stanley's mother. All eyes focus on Connor. Stanley, looking anxious, tightly grips my hand. Her name was Monica. My college girlfriend, Connor continues, choosing his words carefully. When Stanley was born, we were still young, not ready. Connor pauses for a moment. Monica suffered from postpartum depression and struggled with childcare. I was busy with work and couldn't provide enough support. That's when Emma, my adoptive mother, offered to help. Mark interrupts, but why didn't we know about Stanley? Connor answers with a pained expression, Emma said she would look after Stanley for a while. But before I knew it, she had disappeared with Stanley. I lost contact with my adoptive parents too. I listen with an aching heart. I can feel Stanley's small body trembling. I searched for years but couldn't find them, Connor continues. Then recently, I got a sudden contact from Emma. If you want to see Stanley. But Emma's condition was a reunion with Angela, his grandmother. I couldn't understand her true intentions. This explanation reveals part of Luke and Emma's plan. They were trying to manipulate our family using Stanley. Connor. I choke up. You and Stanley, and everyone in this family, were being used as pawns in their scheme. A heavy silence falls over the room. Everyone tries to process this complex situation. Tears shine in Stanley's eyes, and Connor gently embraces him. Mark stands up and moves to the window. His back no longer shows the loneliness it used to carry. Then the cafe door opens again. It's Mark. Sorry I'm late. Mark is slightly out of breath. His eyes widen when he sees Connor. Mark, this is Connor. Your twin brother, I say. Mark sits down, unable to hide his agitation. Why now? I'll explain. I take a deep breath. Actually, the family's secret, Luke and Emma's plan, and Stanley's existence. After I finish explaining everything, a heavy silence falls over the table. Mark speaks first. So that's why I always felt something was missing. Connor looks at Mark. Me too. Like I'd lost something important. Their eyes meet. There's an indescribable bond visible in that moment. So, Stanley is? Mark asks. Yes, he's my son, Connor answers. I didn't know about him until recently. Let's have a family meeting, I suggest. Let's discuss our future together, including Stanley. The next day, the four of us gather in my living room. Stanley sits nervously next to Connor. Stanley, this is your father, I say gently. Stanley looks up at Connor and timidly reaches out his hand. Connor takes that small hand, tears in his eyes. Everyone, I speak up. From now on, let's walk forward as one family. We can't change the past, but we can create our future. Mark nods, though still somewhat hesitant. It might take time, but let's try. Connor agrees. We have a lot of time to make up for. Stanley remains silent, but his expression shows a bit of relief. From now on, we'll overcome everything together, good and bad, I say. Because we're family. Outside the window, the sun is setting. Like waiting for a new dawn, our family's new story was about to begin. The room's atmosphere was a mixture of expectation and anxiety. Yet there was also a definite light of hope. There will be difficulties ahead. But at this moment, we had begun walking together as one family. The next day, I picked up the phone with trembling hands. "Luke, we need to talk. Let's meet right now." A few hours later, I was facing Luke in the lawyer's office. His face showed more anxiety than regret. "Why?" My voice is low, anger seeping through. "Why did you betray us like this?" Luke averts his eyes. "Angela, I won't make excuses. Just be quiet," I cut him off. "I have no reason to believe your words anymore." The lawyer presents documents. These are the divorce terms. They include property division and arrangements regarding Stanley. Luke's face changes color. "About Stanley. He's Connor's son. In other words, my grandson," I say firmly. "You have no right to use Stanley." The meeting proceeds methodically. Luke's fraudulent plan, his conspiracy with Emma, everything comes to light. Later, through Connor, we also took legal action against Emma. Custody of Stanley, and holding her accountable for her involvement in the scheme. After this painful process, we were ready to take a new step forward. In the living room, the family's expressions mixed tension and expectation. We sat in a circle, me, Angela, at the center, with Connor, Mark, and Stanley. The soft sunlight streaming through the window seemed to watch over this important moment. "Everyone," I take a deep breath and begin. "Today is the day we share our family's truth." Looking at each face, I start talking about 20 years ago. How I gave birth to twins at 18, the decision to give one up for adoption due to financial difficulties, and my life afterward. I put regret and love into each word. Connor and Mark's expressions change. Surprise, sadness, and gradually understanding appear. And then, Luke and Emma's plan. My voice shakes slightly as I talk about this part. I reveal everything, their betrayal, their scheme using Stanley. Stanley listens with a confused expression. Connor gently places his hand on his shoulder. When I finish speaking, silence fills the room. Everyone seems to be trying to process this truth. Mark speaks first. "I always felt something was missing. Now I finally understand what it was." Connor nods. "Me too. Like something was connecting all of us here." Stanley asks in a small voice, "Do I really have a real family now?" I answer with tears in my eyes, "Yes, Stanley. We're all your family." At that moment, the room's atmosphere changes. The tension dissolves, and warmth spreads. Next, we discuss how to deal with Luke and Emma. We decide to consult lawyers and take legal measures. But, I say, we won't waste energy on hating them. Instead, let's focus on our new life. Everyone agrees. This decision becomes our first step toward the future. When discussing Stanley's upbringing, there was an unexpected development. Connor says, "I want custody of Stanley. But I want us all to raise him together." Mark agrees. I want to be involved in Stanley's life too, as his uncle. I'm speechless with emotion. Everyone, thank you. From that day, our new life began. Connor and Stanley moved into my house, and Mark visits frequently. On weekends, we have picnics in the park or cook together. Laughter echoes throughout the house. Sometimes we argue, but even that deepens our family bonds. Stanley grows brighter day by day. He starts school, makes friends, and smiles more. Connor and Mark also deepen their brotherly bond, as if making up for the lost 20 years. Seeing them sitting together warms my heart. And 1 year later, we're having a barbecue in the garden. Connor is in charge of grilling, Mark is serving drinks, and Stanley runs around energetically. I sit in a deck chair, watching this scene. Happiness and relief spread through my heart. Connor sits next to me. "Mom, are you happy?" I answer with a smile, "Yes, very." Mark joins us, and Stanley comes running over. "Thank you, everyone," I say. I'm truly blessed to have such a wonderful family. Stanley laughs innocently. Connor and Mark were peaceful expressions. At this moment, I truly feel it. This is the beginning of my new life. Overcoming past pain and regrets, finding happiness here and now. The wind blows gently, and the garden trees rustle. As if celebrating the beginning of our new story. "Come on, let's eat," I stand up. The whole family gathers around the table. We share food and conversation flows. Smiles overflow at the dining table. At this moment, I'm certain. Whatever difficulties may come, we can overcome them with these bonds. A new chapter has begun. Angela, Connor, Mark, Stanley. And including any new family members we might meet in the future. Our story continues on. At dusk, after cleaning up from the barbecue, we gathered in the living room. Stanley is asleep on the sofa. Looking at his innocent sleeping face fills my heart. Connor makes coffee. His gestures remind me of Luke from the past. But Connor's eyes hold gentleness and sincerity. Mark stands by the window, gazing at the garden. His back no longer shows its previous tension. His shoulders are relaxed, emanating a peaceful atmosphere. "Hey," I speak quietly. "Let's talk about our future together." Connor and Mark nod, and we sit around the table. First, about Stanley, Connor starts. "I want us all to decide about his education." Mark agrees. "Yes. I want to do what I can as his uncle too." I'm moved by how much they've grown. That's wonderful. Stanley must be so happy to have such a wonderful family. The discussion continues into the night. Stanley's schooling, how to spend holidays, how to support his future dreams. Sometimes opinions differ, but ultimately we respect and understand each other. The next morning at breakfast, we share last night's decisions with Stanley. "Stanley," Connor calls gently. "Let's all work hard together from now on." Stanley's eyes shine. "Yes." From that day, our lives become even more vibrant. On weekends, we go camping as a family or cheer at Stanley's baseball games. Sometimes we have differences of opinion, but even those deepen our family bonds. A few months later, Connor announces a major decision. I've decided to move to this town. Mark follows. Actually, I'm thinking about living nearby too. I'm speechless. Everyone. Stanley jumps with joy. Yay! We can all live together. At that moment, tears well up in my eyes. I feel deep in my heart that this is the true form of family. And now, 1 year since that day, we are bound by stronger, deeper ties. Connor has moved to the neighborhood, and Mark visits frequently. Stanley has made friends at school and seems to enjoy each day. Tonight, too, we gather for dinner. Laughter echoes around the table, and a warm atmosphere flows through the room. After dinner, once Stanley has gone to bed, we three adults step out into the garden. Under the starlit sky, each of us holds a glass. A toast, I say, to our new life. The glasses clink softly in the quiet night. Connor says, "Mom, thank you for creating this family." Mark nods. "Yes, really, thank you." I embrace them both. "No, thank you. You've made my life so much richer." Looking up at the starry sky, I whisper in my heart, "This is my life, with all its pain and joy included. And I'm sure more wonderful stories are yet to come." The night breeze gently caresses my cheek. There we stand, ready to greet a new morning together.